Hello, everybody. It's Christian again, here with BFO, your new best friend. And here are my other co-hosts.
Hey, it's Sarah. Hey, it's Eliza.
Hello again, it's John.
And here's Jeremy. Nice to see you guys.
Yes, our new guest for the week. So today we're going to be discussing a little bit about Jeremy. He's done a lot in ontology space, and he's done a lot in the AI space, and a little bit of the finance space. He's an expert in the field with years of experience behind his back, and it should make for a really great conversation this week.
I hope so. Thank you.
Jeremy, I want to jump right in. On your website, NaaS AI, it says open source alternative to Palantir. And boy, those sound like fighting words.
You're hitting hard right in the first minute. So let's start with this. Like, I have been, as a child, I've been the guy that was connecting everything to everything all the time. From history to science to music to art to everything. Like, everything for me was connected. I was a really bad guy at school. Like, I was asking too many questions to the teachers. Why do you say this in this class? It's related to this other class. And I was like, no, I don't understand. It's like music is mathematics and all that sort of stuff. Like, for me, was kind of obvious, but never felt like it was so clear that people were reading this the same way that I was reading it. So my whole journey was about discovering why I was like this. And I ended up becoming kind of fascinated by ancient civilization and Greeks, and where ontology has been having its first, I would say, bits of literature. Also India, China, all those kind of civilizations were very interesting to me. I'm not going to say that I had Aristotle in my mind since the beginning of my childhood, but somehow the Greeks passed around this, the Egyptians passed around this. So I was really, really interested into this. And my journey was really going to be changed when I went to India and I started like also discovering all this culture for real. So I had this passion about traveling, about connecting things together. So I became really attuned to geopolitical stuff, economical stuff, like all these kind of topics were really interested to me. So the first link with Palantir and this claim is basically, I'm interested, but so are many people interested about how everything connects in the world. Part of what those guys are doing is connecting things together for many different reasons and purposes. So that's the shortest version that I can do in a few minutes to go from that point to the Palantir claim on the website. But on the way of like doing all these kind of things, traveling and discovering a bit about that, I also became fascinated about finance in the middle of this geopolitics and all that kind of stuff. So finance became really interested to me, especially cash flow management, because cash kind of connects everything in the business, literally, not kind of, actually. It's like the cash flow is the way you can explain so many things. So I became I started in treasury management after my travels in South America and India and China. I started doing the real job because my dad forced me into finding a job at some point. I studied into this, I did this master in finance and I studied in treasury management. And I learned a lot. I went in this company, in a tech company, and after that in an oil and gas company. I started doing ontologies without realizing it. I was connecting, I was the analyst guy. I was the mercenary kind of guy that the senior leaders call up late at night. Hey, did you see what happened in Angola? I want that report for tomorrow morning. I know you can do it. And so I was the guy mixing Excel and VBA and all this kind of stuff and delivering it for the morning. And they were happy. I was happy. I was learning a few stuff from their tricks. The tricks that senior leadership is another word that I didn't know. So I learned quite a bit about like serving those guys. And I started at some point, it was just too much for me. And I started being an entrepreneur. And I was like, I want to do my own stuff. This IT craziness, this political craziness. Let me just sell you my services and not be an employee anymore. My entrepreneurship journey took many forms. The first one was really related to treasury management and how to automate dashboards. The second piece was more about, now that we have this automation of dashboard, we are serving big corporations in France mostly, but like large corporation you all know of, like the luxury brands and stuff. And it was not enough for me to satisfy my need for connecting things together. Because when you do finance, you just do one thing, one domain. And how do you connect the rest? How do you actually explain stuff, simulate scenarios? This was still very hard to me. So I started learning how to code. So, and now this platform that we build is the emergence of that, because when I started moving into the code and software development, I pushed a lot of stuff to the open source with my friends and colleagues that were building this NaaS AI story. It was not the initial company that I created, but the open source came at the very moment where we started being like, yeah, okay, we understood how finance works, how dashboard works, how P&L works, and all those kind of stuff. Let's try to open source some methodologies on how to automate workflows that can be portable not only for finance, but for other domains. And this open source repository, it took the attention of one of the founding fathers of Python, called Travis Oliphant. And he was like, oh, it's been a while. I've been looking for a guy coming from not the tech side, doing this kind of automation and open source quality work. And if you look at the work, it's still published on GitHub. It's called the Awesome Notebooks. It's really organized in such a way that you can build an ontology out of it, because it's like always the same blocks that we repeated over the different templates that you could use to automate any kind of workflows. And then this guy, Travis, was really interested into getting in business with us. So we incorporated in the US and we started building this NaaS AI story, with him being one of our key mentors. He essentially told us, you need to pursue your mindset and figure out how to connect your business workflows, your automation in Python to do dashboard with AI. And then came the bigger problem. How do you actually make this reliable? You guys have been using AI, right? It's like full of hallucinations. Not a bug, it's a feature, actually, this kind of things. So how do you change from that probabilistic nature of those machines to a more deterministic one? Because when you do finance, you have no place for hallucination. Like, you give me a number, you give me a number. So this became super interesting. And I made so much research to figure out how this could work. And guess what? I came on ontologies. At some point, it was like, oh, okay. And then, oh, and by the way, the biggest company in the world right now is claiming ontology as their centerpiece of their software. All right, let's deep dive, right? So that's the long story short. So now we are building this open source NaaS AI platform and trying to put ontologies in the middle of business workflows using Python and large language models. I was super lucky because I started writing about this on LinkedIn quite heavily. I was journaling every day on LinkedIn. Someone from the community of a BFO came up and said, hey, I guess that we need to introduce you to John Beverly and Harry Smith, because you're onto something interesting. So yeah, this is what happened. And since it was basically a year and a half ago, over the last year, I became a research associate to the University of Buffalo on top of the NaaS AI development, because Barry and John were seeing a bunch of opportunities to figure out how to make BFO and other related like ontologies, the CEO suite and etc. more, I would say, available or more easy to understand from a non-academical standpoint, to appeal to a bunch of guys that are close to my field, which is finance and audit and stuff like that. And this, I was already doing projects with them, but I pushed more about, look at how you operate today with AI and look at what I've done, this prototype that I've done that can explain whatever AI is saying, because I've been grounding this AI to an ontology. And then this clicked, and this is how things started to move for me. Like I became a senior advisor to this huge audit and consulting firm. Now I have Buffalo Research, I have NaaS AI for development of the software, and I have this big partnership with the guys in the audited finance space.
I'm gonna kind of like tug on some stuff that you talked about. So ontology is something that has a tradition, going back thousands of years. And AI tradition kind of really begins with the advent of computing. So tradition is much smaller, but there's this interesting integration that you talked about, right? So I'm curious, what do you think AI can bring to ontologies in its current, either in its current operating state or the kind of anticipated state certain people hope it's going to go? Is there anything special about AI that would be brought to ontology?
That's a very good question, Jonathan. Thank you for asking this. Usually it's the opposite. Like, people are saying like, hey, now Like exactly as you said. So a lot of things AI can bring to ontologies is the ability, like if you think about it, AI models, the whole web taken down into a drive, putting some weights on those different files and lines of information, compressing everything into a file of binary one and zeros, and then you query this and you figure out if the next word is going to be interesting. It's a very simplified version of what an LLM is, but that's actually what how I see it. It's really helpful because in ontology engineering, you want to go about terms and definitions and examples. Like those three things are super key into how to build a good ontology, right? You need to define terms, have the definition, have the example in your triple format. It's very interesting to see statistically where a term and how a definition would be defined by a statistical model that I've ingested all the web, right? So I'm always super interested into figuring this out. On top of this, if you put a good system prompt in your AI system, crazy good results. And I'm here saying this because I've been doing this for a while now. And it's super interesting to see that even so, not all ontologies are made equal here into the prompting of the AI. If you use pure AI and you try to build this, you might not get what you want. But if you start putting in the system prompt a piece that says, this is your ontology, you need to reflect around this structure, like what I did when I did a system prompt and I put BFO inside the system prompt, then you start having like, oh, okay, I understand the structure, the relationship, the axiom, the stuff, and they start writing like this, like they start mimicking whatever in the system prompt. And I said that to Barry the first time that I saw him. I was like, did you realize that it's basically giving some guardrails into like some structure into the AI model? And I was like, yeah. I would say that it's not so my answer to your question is not really like what AI can bring to ontologies, but what an AI that is prompted with reference to ontological grounding is going to do for you building a nice ontology. But you need to put like the default mode of just an AI prompting stuff is not good. Like you need to know what you put inside the system prompt of an AI system before you get interesting results. It's not really useful otherwise. It's full of like you say one thing one time and the other time you ask the same question, it could be another thing. But if you start putting some logic into the system prompt, then it's much more useful.
Jeremy, one of the comments that you made when you were just articulating the connection between ontologies and AI, you said, not all ontologies are made equal. We here couldn't agree more. And we're wondering if you could please expand upon the reasoning as to why that is.
I've tried many different ontologies before I found out BFO. I found ontologies before I found BFO. So I started with this. Conceptually, as I told you, I was interested into ancient civilization and all that stuff. So the Greeks and the Aristotle and all that stuff is where I landed when I started doing this. And then I wanted to understand what are the branches and how this evolved into the public space. So of course, you see DOLCE, you see UFO, you see all those very interesting ontologies, and you start understanding there is structure and layers into the ontology space. You have top levels, supposed to be small, encompassing many different like abstraction, many different domains. And then you have other ontologies that are more focused on specific things. So the W3C, for example, the word standard, web standard, it's full of ontologies for different things, document and stuff. And when you start looking at this, I was really like, oh, this is so complex. And who did that? Like, how can I talk to this guy and ask questions and how can I just reuse this for my need where I need to change this class and this other class and this relationship is not what I feel is the right call and stuff like this. So the problem with all those ontologies available on the web on the different platforms that you can see, like the BioPortal or the W3C or the, I don't know, like there is many others like the very interesting to see that it's basically encoding viewpoints at some point. You have a viewpoint and you encode it and you understand how this needs to be done, but how do you make sure that you're not biased in any way? This is what was interesting to me. And this is why I started challenging all those, like, she's like, nope, bias here too. And at some point, like the outcome was, I was eliminating many of those things and understanding at the same time the application level, the domain level, the pattern level, and the top level. That is mostly what is now used into what I do, based on the learnings that I also got from Barry and John. This realization of saying not all ontologies are the same. They are either part of different groups, application, domain, patterns, or top level, basically, or mid-level. They call it mid-level for I think what is supposed to be extensions of the top level is I think the closest way to answer to the question. All ontologies are not made equal, especially when you look at BFO. So ontologies claiming to be top level ontologies are a few. The UFO are one, the like DOLCE are another one. So this practice of extending ontologies has been there for a minute. I think the one that really is for me, what is appealing to me was the one that was recognized by an international institution as being a standard. But this was, okay, so that's a standard. Cool. I can use that because my word in finance is I need a chart of account. I need to have assets, liabilities, client, suppliers, cash, like structure into like this information goes here, here, here. But when you start using an ontologies, and yes, there are W3T standards and stuff. No, I'm not good, but the ISO one are the ones that are mostly used inside corporations for many, like for IT, for stuff like that. So it was a logical deep dive for me to go into BFO because of this. And at some point, it also became a aha moment for me when I saw this and I downloaded this paper on the ISO and I saw the taxonomy in BFO. I remember this, okay, so they figured out time and they figured out process as an abstraction, at the top level abstraction, like everything is an event, process that can be observed by an entity and describe whatever this entity is seeing or witnessing. And so I like the nice way of putting this together with the continuant, the occurrent, and all I think it was very smart. And then when you go even more into it, you're like, oh, where does it come from? From the Gene Ontology. Please, okay, so this guy figured out DNA and how like everything unfolds into the body and has this standard emerging from it. Okay, who is this genius? So this is like literally how I reacted. I was like, okay, so I can use that and probably I can extend that to a lot of different things. And this is why I became a BFO user.
That makes so much sense. So many things to recommend it and how smart it is. Jeremy, I'm also interested in your experience with the BFO community, since you said that somebody on LinkedIn brought you over and introduced it to you. What's that community like, and how does interacting with them impact your experience using BFO?
Good question. Well, people reply to you. They just say, hey, hello. Nice to meet you. Like, would you like to share experiences and stuff? So it was nice because I went to other groups where I didn't get the same warmth, basically.
It's just like what we're doing here. We said, hey, do you want to come on our podcast? Tell us all about everything you do. We love BFO.
Exactly. It's really, for me, the people more than that I met. Because, those people are really cool. I like to think through, like, I like to discuss and exchange ideas and stuff like that and challenge ideas. I think the non-biased aspect of the community in terms of, we don't care, like we know that it's used in biomedical, in like government stuff, in industrial stuff, in technology stuff. There is many usage of BFO, but it's still a top level thinking that can work for anything. So let's try to wrangle up ideas and figure out how do you model this, how do you model that. So hence the whole story of also me trying to figure out how do we systematize the modeling with BFO with very simple units.
We all know that BFO has a lot of strengths that are just captured in how it was designed. So there's different things we all probably really like or really enjoy about its structure and what it allows us to do. What is the one you think is the strongest thing it has going for it?
Tricky question. There is not one, there is 7. And this is what I've been cooking with John. I was saying to him, hey, those are the ones that you want to have. And you have 34 basically structures in BFO, but those 7s, they can do anything. And from those 7s, you can infer whatever is happening, like the rest. So I told you that my view of BFO was like, it's about observing reality and describing it in a systematic way. So everything that happens in this reality is made out of a material entity that is part of a process occurring in time. We have 3. Then it happens inside sites, places. It has some information about it. So it's the information content entity. It has qualities, and it has realizables, functions, roles, and dispositions. So if you have those 7 things, like the material entity, the process, the temporal region, the site, the information content entity, the qualities, and the realizables, you can describe anything. Like I have zero doubt about that. And most likely, what is the most interesting is that when you don't have those 7 buckets in your data set, then your data is shit or incomplete. This is super, super helpful. So many processes don't have those information stored into it. And this is how you discover big gaps inside the data set that we have, and why everybody is crying now because they don't have the quality of the data they need to put inside the AI to make it useful. That's my straight up answer to it.
I got to say, I love the answer. Yeah, I don't want to change gears here too much. To just bounce back on a couple of things that you were saying prior, I really agree that the community that BFO has created, and really thanks to John, Barry, and everybody else in the community, promoted this sort of aspect of accepting people that are just interested in reality. And it really does feel, because BFO is such a top level that you mentioned, that maybe my brain's just going the wrong direction, but it really feels like we're back in the great age of philosophy, where everyone's gathering, trying to figure out reality one piece at a time. Someone's doing biology, someone's doing finance, someone's doing geospatial and stuff like that. So it really does feel like when we all come together, even if we have critiques, it's not because we're trying to criticize your thinking, but more of just are you viewing reality in the same way? But I guess
it's super insightful.
Yeah,
positions that you up here. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, I think it's phenomenal, and it's what attracts me to the field, and really happy to be a part of the community. But to change gears on the question here, I did have a question on what your thoughts were on AGI. So I know Barry's response to AGI. I mean, for the listeners who don't know what his response is, he wrote a book called Why Machines Will Never Rule the World. So if you can't guess his position on AGI there, just read the book. You'll find out more. But what's your position on AGI? Do you think this is something if we have BFO is the top level, right? But let's say the rest of reality perfectly, the rest to a mid-level to where we could implement this to AI, and it starts understanding, not only just understanding the world, but also I don't know, having very human-like self-referential thoughts and so on and so forth. Do you think this is possible at all in the future?
No.
The shortest answer of the night. No.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's possible. It's I agree with the take that Barry is having. I think many people agree in the scientific space that this is a marketing play. It's making people raise a lot of money, but let's just be factual. They started with saying AGI. last year, they started saying, oh, by the way, this is good if you put some knowledge engineering into it. It was in August of last year. They started putting a paper on OpenAI. I can give you the link to the archive on the web. But they took down this blog post. It was about saying subject, predicate, object, and how you need to structure your data in such a way that you can interoperate your information. Guess what they rolled out after this? They rolled out memory system inside of ChatGPT, where the ChatGPT started recording your conversations, how things were connected together. So they did a blog post, they removed the blog post, they started having a memory system that was more advanced than the rest. And still it's not AGI. Let's have a definition about AGI first before claiming that it can exist or not exist. But if AGI is this super intelligent system that is on its own figuring things out, you need to teach, you need to give structure, you need to build systems. Like, it's not like how can a machine be so specific to you and so generalizable for everybody? So I think it's a really like big fairy tale. You need to have understanding of the domain, of the territory, of the context in which you are. And if you don't have prior experiences that are mostly human, feelings, emotions, readings, like stuff like that, like, you will have an interesting parrot. And this is already proved. I mean, now, have you seen that they're also scaling down all the infrastructure play, like to go heavy on AGI has been also the moment where all those industrial bulls are basically building more infrastructure. So for me, the AGI story is really the embodiment of the brute force mindset, brute forcing everything into its way. It's been working for the American like complex as a whole. Like, brute forcing stuff has been working for quite a bunch of stories. There is also a lot of stuff to the way that American people and all those people inventing stuff are good at. It's like also connecting things together. And a whole bunch of scientific guys like Gary Marcus, and they've been completely like forgotten and not taken to and pointed out, like, no, you're wrong and stuff like that. When those guys are actually the guys that want to connect all the fields, that understand this kind of thing. So I believe that the brute force play has gone away. Then they had this much money and it was needed to do it, and the AGI story was good. But scaling laws, which is the basis on which the AGI is built on, like the scaling of capabilities, the more compute you put at data, the better the model is. Well, they exhausted already all the data and they don't have any more to train on. So now, where do we go? So maybe there is AGI at the point where information is going to be changing geometry and go from back what we were saying before to like relational rows and columns to actual triples. And then we can train on those things and maybe we can uncover new heights. But I don't know. I'm not so sure.
So if AGI, for the purposes of this conversation, we don't think it is ever going to happen. So we're not going to reach that end of the threshold.
I would not say never going to happen.
Oh, never going to? Okay.
I would say, depending on the definition, something could look like AGI, but we need to be sure about the definition. Is it a result of pure brute force compute that is going to be applied to data and that's going to be exponential? Or is it going to be the effort of a bunch of engineers, of philosophers, like Christian was saying, that put together a good enough data set so it can capture the most of the essence of what is it to be human? Back to, I think I really like what you said, Christian, about like a bunch of people coming from different domains using the same techniques to describe reality. I think it's really a good one. Back to the lack of data and the exhaustion that we have of unstructured data and stuff like this, I believe that there is a new era of data that needs to happen to change the geometry of it and to add what's missing. Back to the 7 buckets of BFO that I claimed before, like the material entity, process, qualities, time, space, realizables. There is a bunch of things that you can see in most of the knowledge graph right now. They mostly talk about information. So they miss the 6 others. They just talk about documents and what the document has inside it. When you start looking at the material entity, you start thinking about how can I describe a material entity? Is it like a human, a group of humans, a chip, a group of chips that make a computer? You start having a real touch on reality that you don't have if you just describe this as an information. Same goes for processes. You might have macro, micro, nano processes at different levels that you might have. If you have, my feeling about this call now is I feel very good. I have some nano processes that are saying, hey, maybe, I don't know, Palantir will watch it one day and come back to me saying like, you said, I don't know, like, you see what I mean? Like you might have different ways of describing this. And so this ability to describe what happens, what I feel, what I see, all those kind of things are not even touched by data right now, and not even existing. There is no, like, somehow there is a missing. We believe there is so many data. I don't believe there. I think there is very little good data. And when you saw this, you understand why the AI systems are also so damned in a way. Like they don't have meaningful stuff. What is the most interesting piece of all of this for me is the ability to have the realizables, the material entity. This almost never exists inside data sets. Like what this thing do, what is it for, what does it realize, what is this function and stuff like this. When you look at any kind of rows in your data, you don't see stuff. So example, the processes that you have in your organization, they're often described in a standard operating procedure, SOP. And those SOP, they often never have a realizable. Like they don't have a very precisely a disposition inside the BFOs, the disposition to do something. But all the processes have an impact on another thing. So they have a disposition to impact something or somewhere or another process or stuff. Yeah, right now it's just information, pile of information, nothing is connected, or very few is connected. And if we start building all together under reference, that is, how do we describe reality with 7, 8, 34 nodes, we might crack a few things, like in different domains. That's what I hope for. That is, there's no AI is so dumb or AGI is so crazy. I think there is a very rational piece in the middle of it where you can just connect all those knowledge graphs from different people and then cover new stuff. Not really new, but you see patterns that you didn't see before and use it for simulations, scenarios. Hey, what if I do this? What if I do that? Back into the finance stuff, most of my work was doing scenario analysis, simulations. If I do this, what happens? If I do this, what happens? But I didn't have any formal structure. So all my work is just buried into rows and columns. So when I saw this first one, where the hell was this all this time?
Right? Like, that's it. That is what I needed.
So Jeremy, we're coming up on the hour. We always have a question from Barry, the Godfather, but we're going to go a quick round just to ask you a few more quick questions before we get to that. Given your background, I would consider you a bit of a Renaissance man. You've studied so many things. You've really taken the Renaissance liberal arts education to heart, which is awesome. I don't want any of our podcast listeners coming here and thinking you have to be a philosophy major or you have to be a data geek and a coder in order to be interested in ontology or to benefit from it. Are there any particular parts of that education that you think particularly benefited you in your course towards doing what you do now?
Curiosity is the key. Huh? You need to challenge everything. Don't trust anything. If people are curious and I would put it to the reverse. Most people now are doubtful about AI, about everything that's happening in the news, about all this kind of stuff. If we want to do collaborative, community-driven truth, it needs to become somehow a space where anybody that don't even understand BFO are going to be reporting information or giving back information to the open space, but having a standard to report it and to compare notes and stuff, it's going to be very, very useful. So if you're into any kind of field and you want to interoperate, or you want to see if that field applies to another field, and you don't have any clue to answer this question yet, guess what? We might have a clue on how to do it. And it's been something that most scientific, people, or even like when you look at management philosophy and stuff, the managerial part of big corporation is really inspired by other fields. There's so many fields that are inspired by other fields, but this stuff is latent in the brain of a few people that are smart enough to connect those two things together and these things can actually be used. The pattern that I see in this field can be used in this field. But back to the patterns, there is so many patterns that we didn't uncover. It's so many pieces that we didn't even see.
I know we're running out of time, Jeremy. And maybe this is a burden on you to try to answer this shortly, but just one final question, because you come from this heavy finance side. And I recently, read a couple papers on finance, and one of the things is the knowledge gap that seems to be in financial information, such as you can calculate milk is selling really well, but maybe you don't know the person who's like lactose intolerant, and that isn't in your data set. So now you might be seeing a drop in sales at that one market for milk or something like that. Or maybe they're buying soy milk or something instead. But with all that sort of gaps in economic knowledge, do you see ontologies filling that sort of gap?
Short answer, yes, of course. This is what I'm doing right now.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's gonna have to happen. The finance world is stupid and clueless if they don't connect to the real stuff happening. For better finance, maybe better data interconnected could be helpful. Can be used for good, can be used for bad.
That's right.
Be mindful about this too.
Well, thank you for giving it the short and sweet.
Well, Jeremy, as John mentioned, for each of our guests, we asked the godfather of BFO, Barry Smith, for a personal question for our special guests. And for you, he has a real zinger. Why is France such an ontological wasteland?
Because we are rebels. Because we rebel all the time. We are not going to comply to any kind of framework unless we have some interest or some beliefs or some feeling about this that is going to be right. So I think the rebel aspect of France is why.
You could argue, since it is America's 250th, that in our world over here, we're a bunch of rebels and we have embraced ontology. So how would you explain that? And you guys helped us.
Lafayette came.
Yes, we couldn't have done it without Lafayette, the general.
No, I think that it's also a question of not putting the word ontology into stuff that are done in France that are already ontological. And there is so many things like this that you realize, but you do this in such a way that you could put an ontology out of it. But while I use ontology, I work with this framework and it's working. And I see this in many different patterns of scientific guys in France that are, by the way, really good at a lot of tech and engineering stuff. And they do operate under the ontological principles, but without having the word or the way to express it. Same as me. I was doing this and I didn't know the word, I didn't know the discipline, I didn't know the stuff. So it's probably maybe a good way to say to Barry is because lack of good marketing about ontology. I think that's the arrow I needed to give to Barry.
That is probably why Barry asked us to create this podcast for him. Really good ontology marketing.
You need to explain it. You need to make it clear. What is it? What is not? What are the people that are doing it? And marketing, not in a bad sense. Marketing in the sense of putting things to the market really so that people can use it.
And I think based off everything we've talked about during our chat today, that ontology and AI is definitely going to give something that people can use, whether it's individuals, industries.
And if you don't want to go crazy with all this potential, just use a framework. BFO is one.
All right. On that very pro BFO note, this is the end of our podcast. So Jeremy, thank you so much for being on. This was a really great conversation. You have opened our minds to all sorts of things, and I think given us lots of more questions to ask about ontology, AI, and reality in general. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We'll put Jeremy's links in our show notes, and don't forget to stay curious.
All right, podcasters, that's us. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.